Joining us now is Mike Davis. Mike, welcome to the program, Article 3 Project. Mike, you have a busy season right now. In the era of lawfare, Mike Davis is in high demand. Mike, tell us about this Elise Stefanik letter. Why is this not just a typical Congress do-nothing letter? Where is the zing here? What is the spice to this letter?
This is a very important letter by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is the number 4 in House Republican leadership. It's to the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Justice Department, and their job at OPR is to monitor their own lawyers within the department to make sure that they're following the Justice Department's rules, regulations, and ethics. And as Elise Stefanik laid out in her complaint, Jack Smith is clearly violating the Justice Department rules because he is intentionally trying to interfere in the election, the presidential election on November 5th, 2024, and he thinks he's being sly about it, but Elise Stefanik lays out in this complaint how he's not, how he must be held accountable, and it may not happen by the Biden Justice Department, who's clearly going to coddle Jack Smith, but I'll tell you, as someone who clerks on the Supreme Court, I imagine that the Supreme Court justices and their law clerks are going to see this letter and read this letter in the news, and it's going to help inform their opinions on Jack Smith and this bogus, politicized and weaponized prosecutions by Jack Smith and so many others, especially as the Supreme Court considers presidential immunity before the end of June. Let me just give you a couple examples from Elise's letter. Jack Smith, the Biden Justice Department and Jack Smith waited 30 months to bring these unprecedented charges against President Trump. And then the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department colluded with other prosecutors like Fani Willis and Alvin Bragg on their prosecutions, along with the civil fraud prosecution with Tish James in New York. And then even though Jack Smith has like 13 million pages of documents and thousands of hours of videotape related to the January 6th protest that turned into a riot, Jack Smith asked for a trial date within like 5 months, which is just absurd if you know anything about federal prosecutions, right? And it was obvious to jam this trial during the election season. And then also Jack Smith made this extraordinary petition to the Supreme Court that the Supreme Court and only the Supreme Court could hear presidential immunity, and the Supreme Court must skip the routine appellate process through the D.C. Circuit. Well, the Supreme Court said, no, go through the D.C. Circuit. The D.C. Circuit ruled for Jack Smith on presidential immunity. President Trump filed for a cert petition with the Supreme Court to review the D.C. Circuit ruling, and then Jack Smith did a 180 on his position 2 months later and said, oh, no, the Supreme Court doesn't need to hear this case. The D.C. Circuit has it handled after Jack Smith said only the D.C. Circuit can hear such a monumental case like presidential immunity. Elise Stefanik provides the receipts showing that what Jack Smith is doing is election interference, it's lawfare, and it's clearly in violation of Justice Department rules.
So Mike, help me understand an ethics complaint, just as an outsider and as a cynic to all things D.C., this sounds like a 3 to 5 year process. Why is this? What is the goods here? What can we expect to come out of this? Is there a review board? Because from my understanding, ethics complaints can take a long time to remedy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this, that these letters, these complaints actually work, right? We saw that during the Kavanaugh confirmation when my boss, then Chairman Chuck Grassley, did the criminal referrals, 4 criminal referrals on the obstruction campaign and the lies around the Kavanaugh confirmation. It was a shot across the bow. It makes these Democrat operatives back down, right? And what could happen with Jeffrey Ragsdale, who's the counsel at the Office of Professional Responsibility, if he does his job under the regulations, he has to look at this and move forward with to gather evidence and potentially have a hearing on this. And if he doesn't, he's going to be subjected to congressional oversight of his own. I know that my former boss, Chuck Grassley, the Senate Judiciary Committee, I know that House Republicans, they can send oversight letters They can send subpoenas for records. They can send subpoenas for documents. And this is important. Like the Democrats, the Biden Democrats have felt almost zero resistance over the last nearly 2 years since the unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful home raid. And they've, on Trump, for records he's allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act, and they've felt emboldened by this. And they've just had the Democrat Attorney General who stole the election in Arizona by disenfranchising voters on election day, right, just indict another round of Trump defendants and name Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator. They're walking through these Democrats are walking through an open door because these Republican politicians have not put up a fight. And I'm very, very happy that Elise Stefanik, who's the number 4 in the House Republican leadership, is putting up a fight. It sends a powerful message. She's done judicial misconduct complaints in the past against judges, these Democrat judges who have taken off their robes and climbed into the political arena. And it's important that these Democrat operatives, whether they're in robes or in the Justice Department, get pushback by these elected representatives in Congress.
So Mike, I want to emphasize here the New York case. Donald Trump is currently in the courtroom with this lawfare that they're throwing at him repeatedly. Rachel Maddow has a thought here, and I don't know if you saw this clip. It's a minute long where she is, again, she's not a good person, but she might make an interesting point here, and I want you to react to it. Play cut 71.
I have kind of a wild take on this, and it is this. If I were Trump, I would plead guilty. I would try to plead it on down to a single count if I could, pay the fines, take the business punishment or whatever, do the, 5 minutes of jail time, call yourself a martyr for it, raise a lot of money. Or you'll have Secret Service in there, you'll be fine. But if you did that, you could make this thing come to an end. You could shorten this process. You could get out of that courtroom and get back on the campaign trail. You could avoid the punishment of having to show up for court every day. This is likely the only one of his trials that's happening before Election Day. If he gets out and campaigns and runs the campaign he wants to, he'll be president in November. He'll be president-elect as of November, and then all the trials will go away anyway. I know it's a wild take, but if he doesn't pull that ripcord, if he doesn't change his plea to guilty, if he sticks it out at trial, this is going to be another 6 weeks more. How much worse is this going to get for him?
So, Mike, we have to understand who's saying that. Why does she want him to plea down? That makes you kind of think. Mike Davis, your reaction.
It's because this case by Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and former top Biden political appointee Matthew Colangelo and this Democrat judge Juan Merchan, who donated to Biden and whose adult daughter Lauren Merchan is raising tens of millions of dollars off this case. This case is backfiring spectacularly on Joe Biden and Democrats. It's making Trump stronger. And that the Democrats thought they were going to weaken Trump by keeping him in a courtroom for 2 months. They're turning him into a legend. They're going to turn him into Nelson Mandela if they try to put Trump in prison. I actually dare them to put Trump in prison.
Mike Davis, stay right there. Relief. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. We have Mike Davis continuing with us. So let me understand, Mike, it's unlikely that any of the other cases are going to come to trial before November. Is that still the case?
I think that's the case because what you're going to see with the Supreme Court, they're going to rule probably at the end of June that the president of the United States, any president of the United States, has immunity from criminal prosecution for their official acts, not their personal acts. I've been saying this for over a year, and people thought I was crazy. Well, it sounds like at least 5, maybe 6 justices agree with me because I tend to be right. And what's going to happen is it's going to be sent back down to D.C. Obama judge Tanya Chutkan, and she's going to have an evidentiary hearing to figure out what Jack Smith alleged that Trump did in his personal capacity versus what he did in his presidential capacity. For example, you can't fire the acting attorney general unless you're the president of the United States, and that's in Jack Smith's complaint because he's a moron. So then what's going to happen is once she has that evidentiary hearing, that's going to be immediately appealable again to the D.C. Circuit and even the Supreme Court if she doesn't get that right. And so the bottom line is there's very little chance that Jack Smith January 6th case gets to trial before November 5th, 2024, or even January 20th, 2025, and Trump's new acting attorney general can dismiss the case with prejudice on day one. You're going to see down in Georgia with the Fulton County case, there's also presidential immunity involved. And so same deal there. It's not going to get resolved likely before the election. With the presidential records case in front of Judge Eileen Cannon in Georgia, you're dealing with many a lot of discovery, a lot of issues that could get to trial before the election, but it's doubtful. But what the good thing about the trial down in Florida is Judge Eileen Cannon is not a partisan Democrat hack. And so she's going to do what judges are supposed to do, which is to make sure the criminal defendant actually gets a fair trial, unlike these other judges. And so it seems like the only case that's going to get to trial is the one that we're in week 3 of right now, which is Judge Merchan's trial in New York for the non-felony of a businessman settling a nuisance claim, and somehow that turned into campaign finance felonies.
So, Mike, there's an example you want to give up from bring up from Kavanaugh. Can you walk us through that one and break it down for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, so then Chairman Chuck Grassley did a criminal referral for Michael Avenatti and Julie Swetnick because they were lying to the committee, allegedly, and they were obstructing the committee's investigation. And I'll tell you, I was the lead staffer. I was the chief counsel for nominations. I helped the Republicans win that fight, right? And what we saw before Grassley did that criminal referral was we saw that the Democrat senators and the Democrat staff were waging all-out warfare on Kavanaugh, and his nomination was going to go down, right? Until Grassley did that criminal referral, and they realized, those Democrats realized, oh crap, we're not just being jerks politically, we actually could be violating federal law on obstruction of a committee investigation by doing what they're doing. And they backed down immediately. It went from like a jailhouse riot to a church service overnight within seconds after Grassley did that criminal referral. And that's the point of what these members of Congress should be doing, like what Elise just did with this OPR complaint on Jack Smith. Look, Republicans think if we don't have a case with a bow on it, we're not gonna win at trial. If we can't win it at trial and it's not upheld on appeal and by the Supreme Court, it's not worth pursuing. That is a stupid mindset. This is how we get our butts kicked every day on lawfare, because Republicans have that mindset. We need people who know how to fight asymmetrical warfare, that we know how to do lawfare. That's what we're doing at the Article 3 project. That's what people like Elise Stefanik and MTG have been doing. Other Republicans need to step up and start helping with this, because these are Republic-ending tactics by these Biden Democrats, the Biden White House, the Biden Justice Department, Biden himself, these Democrat prosecutors, and they've walked through an open door for over 21 months. It's time for House Republicans to get smart and get tough.
Mike Davis, excellent work as always. Thank you so much. Deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.